And Chris, when you look at the damage that you see from the live shot that we just watched with Eleanor, we can see that this, really did, I guess, race across a large swath of area there. And Alexa was talking about this earlier when she saw it on the radar, that this was a pretty big storm, and here we are.
Yes, and it moved over. Actually, if we can go back to our weather graphics here for just a second, because I do want to kind of look at the damage. The couplet that we talk about here that is indicative of the strong rotation of a tornado. You kind of see, I went back in time here. This is at 12:11. It was right on the parish line, and then at 12:18, that's when the couplet is right over Kentwood proper. So it went directly over the town of Kentwood just after 12:15 or so, and then kind of continued along very quickly. Within 10 minutes, it's already well to the northeast and moving almost into Mississippi. So, and that couplet was still showing up where the reds and greens are tightly wound and right next to each other. So roughly at around 12:15, it looks like that tornado passed directly over Kentwood. We can kind of go back to looking at some of that damage. Also want to update that the tornado warning that had been in effect for Washington Parish, that was allowed to expire at 2:30, so no longer in effect. So at the moment, no longer any active warnings for our viewing area, and also kind of updating the storms that are starting to move back into Kentwood. You just saw from the live shot there, it looks like they were starting to get into some heavy rainfall once again, and we do have some very heavy rainfall moving out of Livingston, St. Helena Parish that will continue through Tangier Parish. Right now, we're getting into some of that intense rainfall with lightning in Kentwood. But when we look at rotation, there is very, very little, and it's primarily a little bit more to the west. So these don't look like, as we're starting to see, something that Alexandra was kind of highlighting, the fact that when we start to get, instead of the rogue storms within the entire line, and we start to see that line kind of fill in, that usually means the winds are starting to become a little bit more parallel with regards to the surface winds and the winds aloft. When they're not parallel, that's when you get rotation, and you get a lot of rotation. If we start to see a little bit more of those winds paralleling each other, we don't get the storm we call wind shear. We don't get that rotation, and then we would not get the ingredients needed or the triggering mechanism for tornadic storms. We can still have the strong thunderstorms, and we can still certainly have some strong winds, but maybe not as much of a concern for tornadic storms. Still there though, still there. We got another couple of hours to go before we can kind of breathe that sigh of relief. But notice, kind of extreme western St. Helena Parish, you are now breathing that sigh of relief as the more intense storms are now across the central part of the parish, and anything west, it's done. That is no longer a severe threat. So not terribly much longer will we have to contend with it over Tangi, but still an ongoing threat. And remember, we really haven't seen that line move deeper into Washington, St. Tammany, or anything on the South Shore yet. We've still got some time to go, and kind of riding along that line down to the south. Intense around Denham Springs as far as rotation goes. Nothing really jumping out. There's been a little bit of some isolated spots, but nothing that is really jumping out. And certainly when we look at the velocities, nothing that is jumping out as any kind of couplet indicating embedded rotation within the line of storms. And then a little bit farther down to the south as we start to approach the river parishes, while intense thunderstorms, it's a little bit more broken, not as intense as the storms have been on the North Shore. And certainly we have been a little bit more, as we've been saying over the last couple of days, a little bit more of that jumping off point from some storms in southeast, or in the North Shore across Southeast Louisiana, and then jumping into southwestern Mississippi, where they have really intensified. That is where we had the confirmed tornado in Tylertown, and now looks like a confirmed tornado in Kentwood, probably around 12:15 or so. So for the folks in Kentwood right now, and again, we have Eleanor Tabone there. I don't know if she can hear us or if we can talk to her just to see if she was able to kind of get any additional information, or if she was able to see any additional damage. As she had mentioned, as soon as they jumped out of the car, once they were able to get into position, they went live. So she really wasn't able to assess the damage, at least in her, outside of her vantage point, but just from what she could see, it was fairly significant. And it looked like those were the same images that we were getting into our chat group with the Weather Service. With the Weather Service from those storms in Kentwood. So it looks like it's pretty much that same barn that she was showing you with what looked to be kind of an 18-wheeler cab in a, I say barn, it was more of a small shed, or large shed I should say, as opposed to any kind of a stronger structure. It looks like those are the same images that we are getting in from Eleanor Tabone, as well as what we got from the sheriff's office a little bit before that. Other storms that they're monitoring, they're keeping an eye out for a cell near Watson, Louisiana, kind of around more the Baton Rouge area, so we'll monitor that. It's something that, again, the Weather Service is keeping a close watch on all of these, and we'll continue to do so through the afternoon hours. Again, to kind of reiterate where we stand right now, we have a field crew on the ground in Kentwood from a confirmed tornado just outside of our area. A likely confirmed tornado in Tylertown with significant damage likely. Have not gotten any reports from there just yet, but at least based on what we had seen from the velocities, from the reflectivity, but more so from our debris signature, it looked like the storm that passed across Tylertown, Mississippi was significant. Fairly significant from the storm that passed over Kentwood. At this time, no active warnings in effect for our area.
So, Chris, I want to ask you something. A lot of folks may be looking at this on the North Shore as these, updates come in. Here we are sitting on the South Shore, whether I'm in Jefferson Parish or Orleans Parish. What is my timeline here as to when these storms will be knocking on our door?
Well, we just had one little shower, heavy shower pop up right around from City Park out toward the lakefront. So we're already starting to get some of these pop-up showers. So it's kind of already begun. We can go jump to our high-res computer model and get an idea of when maybe that line starts moving in. Again, these models aren't perfect. You can kind of see it's maybe a little bit more east of where a lot of those storms, excuse me, a little bit more west from where those storms are in river parishes. But as we kind of time this out, probably within an hour, we'll start to get more and a steady increase in the rainfall around the metro area. So certainly before that across our river parishes. And then that will continue into the 5 o'clock hour. By about 6, we may start to see our South Shore showers and storms maybe on the decline. And certainly, again, as I said, anything west, you're in the clear. So areas west already starting to see settled weather by 6 o'clock across Tangipahoa Parish, across much of Washington, and still ongoing in central and eastern St. Tammany Parish, moving into Pearl River and eventually into Hancock County. And then by about probably before 7, I think just about all of us are kind of in the clear. And then definitely by 8, 9 o'clock, again, if you have plans later on tonight, I think we're going to be in the clear from any additional severe weather. So still another hour plus to go for more of that rain to start moving deeper into the metro area. But we already have a few showers that have started popping up at this hour.
When I look at that radar kind of move across the screen there, is it a fair assessment to say that most of the severe stuff will remain on the North Shore, or is that too hard to judge at this point? No,
it does look like that is going to be the trend. We've seen that from our high resolution models today. And that was something that was highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center. They were called meso discussions, where they kind of deep dive into the active severe weather. And these are not the watches, these are those meso discussions. And notice it's primarily for the North Shore and into Mississippi especially. These are the areas of greatest threat for the intense to violent tornadoes going forward. So even the Storm Prediction Center and the model trend does look to be that a bit more of a focus. And again, I don't want to say that that means in the metro area you can go out, do whatever. This is still something we need to pay attention to very closely through the afternoon. But certainly it looks like more activity will develop north of the lake.
And it can pop up pretty quickly, whether you're on the north or
very
south.
quickly. That sometimes we only get a few minutes notice that these storms become rotating storms, and then a few minutes later it's showing indications that it is dropping a tornado. So yes, sometimes we only have a few minutes. What is more anxiety about severe weather is that all we can do is tell you the ingredients are there, the atmosphere is primed, we will definitely get strong storms. Whether or not they become strong to severe or reach the limits of severe weather is an unknown, and exactly where they form is an unknown.
And we haven't had a lot of focus right now down on the bayou parishes at this point.
Very
right?
quiet right now. This is a look at radar, and I'll kind of zoom in a little bit more on our bayou parishes. It's been very quiet. Again, the line is a little bit weaker the farther south you go. Well, we've had maybe a few showers, maybe some brief isolated downpours move across the bayou parishes. Not too much, although it is now getting a bit closer to Thibodaux. So western Lafourche Parish now getting in on some of those more intense storms, and those continue kind of along the line itself is moving east, but these storms themselves are riding along that boundary. So now we're getting the storms moving out of Thibodaux and Lafourche to then more into St. James, St. Charles Parish, excuse me, St. James, St. John Parish, as they continue along that boundary kind of up toward Lake Maurepas, and then eventually continue into the North Shore.
When it comes to the more severe parts of this system, where in our viewing area would you say is the next big focal point?
Well, you know, I don't want to discount even these storms
Sure.
that are moving out of Morgan City, Donaldsonville, so a little bit of a focus will be ongoing in our river parishes. So St. James right now, where we have though seen more of the active storms are these that have been moving out of St. Helena and Livingston Parish. And then initially Tangier Parish, this line will be moving east. So as it does so, then the focus will be more on Washington and St. Tammany Parish.
That big cell that kind of pushed out of Louisiana into Mississippi, what, a couple of hours ago, has that completely dissipated, or where is that now?
No, well, I don't know if this is exactly the same cell, but notice we still are getting confirmed tornado reports now moving toward, say, Collins, Mississippi, Taylorsville, Bay Springs. We're starting to get a little bit out of the range of even our radar as we move farther north and east along that line. But this was definitely going to be the focus. And remember, Hattiesburg to Jackson, so not too far removed from our immediate viewing area, we're under that high risk level 5, which is very rare. You don't see the Storm Prediction Center place areas under a level 5 very often. That usually is once every few years do you see that. And they don't do that just, you know, as kind of a, we'll do it to err on the side of caution. There is a lot of work and effort and forecasting and confidence that goes into issuing those level 5 threats. And that's exactly where, so far over the last couple of hours, we have seen these confirmed tornado reports kind of spreading deeper into Mississippi.
And Aaron, our producer, I don't know if you can hear me, if you can pull up the video that we, the new video that we have out of Kentwood there, and I want Chris, if he's able to look at it, just to kind of, when you think about the damage, like we saw in Eleanor's live shot there, and that's with the sheriff's office. There's some other video as well. But you look at the damage strewn about on people's front yards, then you see trees snapped. How long does it usually take for folks from the National Weather Service to kind of get out there and on the ground to survey all of this?
They're not going to do that, unfortunately, until at the earliest tomorrow. They are right now in kind of their forecast warning mode, where they're more worried about the ongoing storms. And then after that, and again, you know, you want to start cleaning up immediately, so they'll base a lot of their initial assessments on videos like this, pictures that are taken from local officials, and then they will go out and assess. They'll actually use drones, they'll use GIS, which is graphic information systems for mapping. This is a live look out of Macomb from a traffic camera there. We can actually kind of look up at the storms, nothing severe, but certainly some intense rainfall there north of Magnolia toward Macomb. So that's kind of what visibilities are like within some of these heavier thunderstorms, where visibilities are dramatically reduced. Thankfully, at least at this time, no severe weather, no, let's see, the rotation, you know, very, very weak along that line south from Macomb toward Magnolia, then deeper into Kentwood. There is some indication of rotation in Kentwood. Within some of these heavier thunderstorms. I'm kind of hoping now you've got a lot of officials and a lot of folks out there assessing the damage, be able to get into, there not too many structures where they are, but you know, I'm also speaking to our team, Eleanor Tabone, Troy Toops, make sure you're able to get into the car and pay attention to these storms. Not that there is anything jumping out with regards to a tornado, but what we're likely seeing is more of the line, because you can kind of see that that is not a couplet. When you see the green and red, that line, that just means the winds are coming either toward the radar, which is in Hammond, and then moving away from the radar, and that's kind of what we're looking as the leading edge of those storms rolling into Kentwood. So while not necessarily tornadic, certainly some very strong winds just now pushing into the Kentwood area. So good idea for a lot of those folks that are out now assessing the damage to get in. Going back to your question, Mike, with the Weather Service folks to then go and actually survey the damage, they will go, and it's kind of painstaking. They have to go out and physically look at where they think the tornado touched down. They will basically canvass the entire square mileage of where they think that tornado went. But we can also use drones now and get a better idea of where the path might be. And then, as I'd mentioned a little bit earlier, is that tornadoes are not rated based on when they are on the ground. They are rated after the fact based on how much damage they caused. They do take into account what types of structures were damaged. They look at trees. If they're all fallen in the same direction, that might be more straight line winds. If they're in various directions, that indicates rotation, so more indicative of a tornado. So we probably won't get that confirmed until tomorrow at the earliest, Mike.
Of course, the good news right now is the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff saying no serious injuries reported, mainly just a lot of damage. They are doing some searches of homes just to clear those out right now. So that's some good news coming from the severe weather. We, of course, will continue to track this throughout the day. If we need to break into programming, we will do it, of course, to keep you safe. And also be sure to join us on WWL Plus at 5 o'clock. We will have a streaming newscast for you there. Until then, we'll get you back to programming.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Weather, sponsored by Egan Insurance Agency.